Are we all good? Right, let's go. So let's just make you guys smaller. Cool. So ultimately, guys, in this masterclass, I'm going to walk you through ultimately the ins and outs of the physique building process, how to train for a physique transformation, how to prime your body so that you can get max results, building muscle, know how to blast through plateaus. But we're also going to go through some case studies, and Joe is going to be a legend and answer a couple of your questions as well, which I am super, super excited for, which should be really, really cool. Right. So that you can sort of get a bit of a practical understanding of how that actually looks, because it's all well and good seeing these transformations on Instagram, social media, but then how it actually applies is obviously, a little bit different and more in depth. So we're going to look at how Joe and a couple others have gone through and got over obstacles to create, the physique they want, or at least be well on their way to do so. So, how or what are the problems that people actually encounter when they're trying to achieve their physique transformation? So, first of all, and probably most common, I would say, is people just do not know if they're doing the right thing, right? Am I on the right amount of calories? Is it okay to eat this? Should I be training in a different way? Is my weight progressing at a good rate? What do I do now? I've hit a plateau. I'm not making progress. What's going on? How long should it take? Should I be getting there faster? Now, in today's training, we're going to try our best to eliminate those sort of worries that you might be having and go through sort of every step of the way so that you've got clarity and a bit more confidence that you're doing the right thing. Now, having a bit of uncertainty, as I'm sure you guys can all relate, and slow you down because you have those days where you're like, shit, am I doing the right thing? Should I be doing this? Maybe not. And what we need to do is look at making the whole process a lot more simple. Okay, so we're going to go through this. And for you guys that are clients on here, ultimately the goal of all this is to get you to a position where you've upskilled yourself so you can coach yourself in the long run. Because I'm sure, as great as our relationship might be, you don't want to be here forever, you know? So, going on. Now, the second problem that you might face is you go into the gym and you feel like you are working hard, but you're not really seeing the change that you want. Okay. Which can be really frustrating. Now, there's a lot of people who go to the gym, but if you really look around in the gym, there's not that many people who actually have knockout physiques. Now, the reason for that is because they are training. They are not, they're exercising. They're not training with intent. They're just going in there, they're ticking a box. There's not a sort of strategy behind what they're doing. It's going in there, getting it done. Whereas what we need to do is go in there with intent, be specific, and progressively overload our training. Because if we are just exercising, like, as I'm sure you guys can all relate, if you look at your local running club, they all look the same year round, right? And that's because what they're doing is keeping them healthy, but it's not progressing their physiques, right? And we want to build a physique. We don't want to just get healthier. We want to do that, but we also want a physique transformation as well. Okay. Now, for the ladies on here, I'm going to put this out here straight away. Lifting weights is not going to get you too big. It's fucking hard to get too big. I've been trying for absolutely years. It's something that takes years and years and years. There's a couple more people in, so I'm just going to admit them. Cool. They should all be in. Amazing. Right. So it is something that does take time and a huge amount of effort, a huge amount of food, and in most cases as well, testosterone. So it's not really something that we need to worry about. Right. Having that muscle is just going to give your physique the shape that you want. It's going to make you toned. It's going to give you that sort of beach body athletic look that we all want. Okay. Now, in here, we're going to cover the difference between training and between exercising. Okay. So that you can really get the most out of every single session that you go to do in the gym.
Yes.
When this comes up. There is someone unmuted. If you could just mute yourself, because I can't see you all. I don't think. Maybe I can. Let me. There we go. Found them. Perfect. Cool. So the third problem is we just focus on calories, right? We just focus on calories, which is really, really important for sure. And it does dictate what our body weight is doing, if it's going down, if it's going up. But if we just look at calories, you know, we're doing ourselves a disservice and we're not going to get that knockout result that we want because we're not necessarily giving ourselves the food quality that we want or the nutrients that we need. You see, a lot of individuals may choose what's deemed as lower calorie foods, but they're not actually giving themselves the best opportunity to create, you know, a knockout transformation. Okay. Because they're lacking in high quality nutrients, you know, which can lead to us not digesting food effectively. You could be not as healthy, more lethargic. And at the core, if we're predominantly making good quality food choices, we're going to feel a hell of a lot better and get a much, much better result, which doesn't mean you guys can't eat things like chocolate or have a meal out. It's just to predominantly focus on that good quality food so you feel good, you can operate at a high level, and you can get that knockout result that you actually want. Okay. Now, this goes down to simple things like swapping out our sugary cereal for things like oats, right? It's still a similar sort of meal, but we're getting more fiber. It's going to help with our digestion, have less sugar, which isn't the end of the world, right? But it's not to say these foods don't have their place, because having, you know, a low fat, high sugar cereal post workout is still absolutely fantastic. But just to, you know, reiterate the fact, we want to hone in on good quality food, because as much as we could lose weight just from eating Frosties or Mackies, it's not going to give us the physique that we want. Do you know what I mean? Cool. The next problem is we hit that dreaded plateau. You know, we've been nailing everything. We're doing it all, but then the results aren't happening, which can leave you feeling pretty deflated. Like, I know I've been there where I feel like I'm working my ass off and I'm just not making the progress that I want, right? And it leaves you sort of going, is it me? Is it my genetics? Whereas really what we need to do is just take a look at all the variables and be able to manipulate them to get the result that we want. Okay. It gets really overlooked that our body is a live organism. It's dynamic. It's going to adapt to the situation that we put it under. You know, we can often go through periods of high stress, health issues, women going through your menstrual cycle. Like, the body is not exactly the same day in, day out, right? And if we're putting ourselves into a deficit at some point, the body's going to catch up because it's smart, right? This is not to mention maybe a change of lifestyle. Maybe you change from having, you know, a really active job to a sedentary office job where you're just not moving as much, you know? So we need to have a look at all aspects, what you're doing, and then tweak it, because what's working or what was working for you before won't necessarily work for you now. I wish it was that easy, right? Where I could just go, right, we're having these calories, you're going to do these steps, and that's it. And you're going to get amazing results. But unfortunately, it's not that simple. You know, it is a process, and there's things that we're going to need to tweak along that process. You know, I want you guys to be at a point where you know when things are stuck, what you're able to do to move the needle forwards, right? And it's quite simple on paper, but harder to apply. I think someone else is coming here. Admit them in. Cool. Now, another problem, and the last problem we're going to go through here, is people, oh, I think I've skipped on, don't really appreciate what is possible, right? And Joe here is the prime example in this picture here of not necessarily knowing what's possible, but just going, fuck it, let's find out, which I think is really, really cool. And I think this is something that everyone sort of needs to adapt or adopt, sorry, because it's a big problem that holds a lot of people back. You know, they just sort of maybe look at progress other people is making and just go, can't do that. Or maybe you've tried to make progress before and ended up not making any significant change. Okay. And it definitely doesn't help with social media sort of setting you different rules, regulations, different bars where you see all these people absolutely shredded to the bone, and you sort of see that and go, how the fuck could I ever do that? You know, that is so difficult. I don't want to live like that. But we need to appreciate as well, as much as we can push ourselves really far, some people are just going to dictate more time, energy, and effort to it than others. And that's absolutely fine. You know, we've got to get the result that we want, not what someone else wants. Okay. Now, I want you guys to put in the chat, and it would be really, really useful if someone could do me a favor and read any answers out, right? Because I can't see the chat box when I'm sharing my screen. What, actually, I might be able to. Yes, I can. What are you guys most unsure about when it comes to transforming your physique? Like, stick it in the chat if you can see it. What is something that you particularly struggle with or are unsure about? I hope you guys can see the chat as well. Cool. Right, I'll give you guys 2 minutes and stick something in the chat. What is it you guys struggle with or are unsure about? How can I meet a low number of calories and feel full without depriving food groups? Okay, cool. So when it comes to a low number of calories, what we're really going to be looking at here, Pammy, is high volume foods. Where people generally sort of go wrong here is they'll look at their calories and go, how am I going to eat that? You know, but what we need to do is look, instead of looking at it and go, oh, that's a little amount of food, go, right, how can I fit as much food as I can into that amount of calories? And something like a little easy tool to use here is things like, obviously, your standard fruit and veg, it's got to be in there. Lean protein, again, it has to be in there. But then looking at things that are high volume. So potato, for one, potato and rice is going to be an absolute game changer. And if you're really struggling, looking at things like cauliflower rice and konjac noodles, those two, when you are deep in a diet, are an absolute godsend. Cauliflower rice does smell a little bit funny if you are at work, though. I will be honest about that. Claire, unsure how I can lose the belly with just weights. So when it comes to actually dropping body weight, we really don't burn so many calories through exercise at all. So we don't want to be exercising and training to lose fat, right? What we train for is to give our physique shape. And yeah, it contributes to our calorie burn for sure. But most of that is going to come from our nutrition. Okay. We've got to put ourselves in the deficit from mostly our nutrition, our day-to-day movement, and then we use our training to add shape to our physique, and then we do an additional little bit of cardio to just burn a few more calories. So hopefully that answers your question. Amount of calories needed to obtain my dream body type, also the exercise best for me to achieve it. Cool. So in terms of Calories needed. I can't give you a blanket answer because it's fluid and it's going to change at different points depending on the phase or where you are in your diet. A really simple sort of gauge for you to start at, and this does not work for absolutely everyone, is take your body weight in pounds and multiply that by 10. And type of exercise is got to be resistance training, which we'll get onto in just a minute. Balancing uni and my exercise routine. Okay, for sure. When you are at uni, you've got a hell of a lot of work to do. But look at, and we're going to touch on this when we talk about the case studies later, is looking at what you're actually able to give when it comes to your transformation, your fitness journey, and then just maximizing that. If you can get to the gym 3 times a week, absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. That's all you need to do to create a massive amount of change. Cool. Loving what you guys put in the chat. So now let's get into how we actually create that transformation. So the principles behind it. Now, first of all, what we're going to look at is maximizing the physique development process, right? So I'm going to walk you guys through how you can maximize the physique development process, right? And from this, you'll understand sort of how we get people like some of the people on this call a knockout result. Okay. So at first, it's really, really important that we talk through your starting point. Okay. This is the reason that we have such an in-depth, like initial consultation form at the beginning of the process. So we can get a really, really detailed understanding of where you guys are at, what you've struggled with before, so that we can sort of look at, right, what is going to help you the most at this moment in time? What exactly do you need? And what are the missing pieces? Okay. So this is why we look at initially your training, your nutrition, your lifestyle, your mindset. Like it's really, and your obviously your progress pictures and measurements, but it's just important to use as a starting point. You know, it's not the be all and end all, but it gives us a fantastic starting point, right? To sort of map out the next few weeks and months. Okay. And it also enables us to look at what's actually got you to the position you're in. Okay. And then might be in a really good place, but we want to get you to an even better place. All right. And it sort of links into what I said earlier. What got you to here won't get you to here. This is a really, really important thing to remember. Okay. And it's important to realize that to create change, we need to make change. You know, things aren't just gonna be the same throughout the whole process. Like we've got to the position each and every single one of us is in right now, from the foods we ate, how we trained, our daily routines, you know. So to get further, we probably need to adjust that. Okay. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's not. We want a gradual change to get us from where we are now to the position that we want to get to. Okay. Now, this next bit might sound a little bit client specific because we're going to talk about check-ins, but I'm going to link it back into what you guys that are solo should be doing. Okay. Now, as you go through this whole process, it's really, really important for you guys to have check-ins, to monitor how it is you're doing, because what it does, it provides us with an opportunity to see what's going well, what's not going so well, and the progress that you're actually making towards the goal that you want, and potentially what we need to change. Okay. Now, the goal of this the check-in, is for you guys to gain an understanding of what to do. So as you progress more, you know what to do by yourself. Now, even for you guys that are off solo, I would still be doing a check-in with yourself, you know, every single week, you know, where you ask yourself, have I been consistent? Have I actually turned up? Have I ticked all the boxes that I set out? You know, am I making progress? Am I stuck? Do I need to seek help? Or do I have a plan that I've just not really followed? You know, having these data points and checkpoints for us to look back on a week-to-week basis is so important, because another quote, it's going to be a couple of these, if you're not assessing, you're just guessing, right? And I don't know about you, I don't want to leave my physique transformation up to guesswork. I want to know 100% I'm doing the right thing to get the result that I want. Okay. And I'm sure you guys do too. So, what we look at in check ins here is the data side of things, your weight, calories, steps, training sessions, and so forth, your progress pictures, how your body is actually looking, so we can look at the changes you're making on a week to week, month to month basis. And sometimes we can look at things like, okay, you've been eating this food and that's leaving you a little bit bloated, or we can see how effective the training is that we're doing on our bodies. Then we have biofeedback, which is basically a fancy way of saying how we're feeling, how the system as a body is actually responding. Your life situations, how is work? How is your social life? Travel? Do you have massive plans coming up that's going to affect you being able to adhere what you're trying to set out to? Which I think is why, it's a big reason why here we really get good results, because talking about socials is just part and parcel of it, and I think it's a really important thing because, I like going out for a social at the weekend. Like, I'm dieting at the minute, but we're going to go and watch England, South Africa on Saturday, and I'm going to have a drink. I'm going to change things to fit that social in, but because I'm looking ahead, I can do that. And it's obviously the same with you guys that are clients, and for those of you that are not, I would still be looking to do the same with you. So you can look ahead at your week and go, right, this is what I want to do at the weekend. How can I make that fit in? Now, to get the most out of these check-ins, fill them in on time, right? And that's, again, if you are a client or not. If you are doing this thing solo, be ruthlessly consistent with the day that you check in. Otherwise, you're going to get lazy with it. You're going to just not fill it out. You're going to not check in with yourself. You're going to let your standards slip, okay, and just not get things done. So what I would always do with this is schedule in your check-in time like you would an appointment at work or a doctor's appointment, so you can actually review how the week is going, okay? And give yourself as much detail as possible. What happens when things change? Spontaneous plans, for example. So when it comes to like a spontaneous plan, right, there's still things you can do to damage limitate, because if you have, for example, a spontaneous meal out, there's always something more beneficial for you on the menu. Okay. If it's a night out, you can go, okay, well, I'm going to drink lower calorie option drinks. And I'm just going to have 5, and I'm going to stop things there. Right. It still, works into the same sort of picture of just damage limitation. Or you might just go, you know what? Tonight, what I'm going to do tonight is really fucking cool. And I'm happy with maintenance, and I'll just get straight back on things tomorrow. So I hope that answers your question. Cool. But ultimately, when it comes to your check-ins with myself, with yourself, it's not just about singing and dancing positives. Everyone's progress starts with being honest. If you're lying to me, you're lying to yourself. You're not going to make the progress that you want, because you're just hiding away from the truth. And there's nothing wrong with the truth. It just means you need to put something in place to get you past whatever it is you're struggling with. Okay. And it also allows us sort of time to plan ahead, know where you're at mentally and physically. Okay. When this comes up. Cool. Whilst we're doing our day-to-day sort of work, our check-ins, it's really important we look at progress metrics, our weights, our steps, our calories, and if our progress is stalling, we might need to change them. Or if our plans change, if, for example, you are going on holiday, like Joe to Marbella or Ibiza previously, you might look at that and go, you know what? I want to speed things up a little bit. So you can go maybe a little bit harder on the calorie front or increase your steps. Or if you know you have a plan at the weekend that's gonna involve a lot of calories, like Tom on here when we had our call yesterday or the day before was talking to me and talking about stag do's. And when it comes to a stag do, it might be a little bit of a heavy one, but we can still damage, limitate, and consume less calories in the week. So damage come the weekend isn't as aggressive. What really, really matters here is balancing out the weekly calorie average, right? Day to day, it doesn't not matter because we don't want to be having 600 calories one day and then 3,000 the next, but we can still be flexible with it. It doesn't need to be exactly the same every single day. Okay. Now, to make the most amount of progress, I really, really recommend you guys build in to your day life systems, which is just a fancy sort of way of saying have a fucking schedule. Have set days where you do your food shop, where you weigh yourself daily and you take your weekly average, where you book out time for your training sessions or for your meal prep. Organize nights where if you have kids and you have a partner, one of you will watch the kids and the other one can go train, or double batching dinners and then, or meal cooking for 7 days. These are just examples, but look at what you can do on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, right? And systemize it. Put it in a schedule. It will make your life so much easier. If we're going at things willy-nilly, right, and just hoping for the best, throwing shit and seeing what sticks, it won't stick. It's a horrible way of putting it, but it's true. Okay. Targets. Now, it's uber important that we know where we're going. Otherwise, we're just going to be wandering around aimlessly. Okay. So the way I like to sort of look at goals is they are manageable, but they're probably a little bit out of reach. We're going to have to graft for them, and then if we notice we're not hitting that target or perhaps what's required to hit that target in the long run, and maybe your goals change, you can change your goals or adapt if needed. You don't have to set this goal in absolute rock solid stone and then persist on getting there if you don't actually want to. Okay. But it is important to not just have one goal throughout the whole process. I really love it when clients want to do a photo shoot or when they're like, you know what, I'm absolutely loving hip thrusts. I want to smash this hip thrust target. I want to get in the 100 kg hip thrust club, and I'd recommend sort of evaluating these on a weekly, monthly basis where you can sort of look at them and go, right, have I made the progress I want? If not, why not? What's stopped me getting there? And you can see if you're being consistent or you can tick them off, right? Ticking them off is the best feeling in the fucking world, right? It's just that dopamine rush of when, right, I've done it, I've ticked it off, let's get it. And then you can set new goals. So you're constantly chasing something. So you're not wandering around in space lost. And if you are feeling a little bit lost, bring it to the table. Talk to myself about it or someone else, so you can get everything out of your head and just feel and understand exactly where you are and where you need to get to, or reevaluate your goals, Now, throughout all of this, it's super important that we coach the person and not the process. Okay. We need to have maneuverability in this kind of thing because there's going to be times when you need to pull back, you need to change the amount of training you're doing, the level of nutritional adherence, because you've got a lot on or in work or in your personal life. Like someone said in the chat earlier, how the fuck do I balance this with uni? right? When you've got a massive amount of uni work, we can adjust your expectations. So you're doing a little bit less on the fitness side and more on the uni side, but sometimes less is more, which is again something we're going to talk about in the case studies. Less isn't always less. As long as less means you can execute at a really, really high level, less is more. Okay. But this is really where communication and honesty needs to happen, because if you're suffering, you're struggling, and you're not making myself aware of it, it's a losing battle because yeah, I'm going to be able to spot it at some point, but if you bring it to the table straight away, we can get it over and done with straight away and get you back feeling good, because there's always room to be flexible. It just depends what that specific individual needs at that moment in time. Okay. Another thing that you guys need to understand is this process is not going to be linear, right? Your weight may and will fluctuate on a day-to-day basis. Okay. Like I said, I'm dieting at the minute and I haven't lost weight for 3 days, and I'm pushing really hard because it's a short-term diet, but it's been stuck on 88.1. And I can almost guarantee you over the next 2 days, it's going to shift a kilo, right? Because sleep's not been great recently. I hit a really intense leg session yesterday where things normally hold a little bit after that. But I know come the end of the week, things are going to balance out. So we need to really appreciate that. And other things come into play here, like stress, hormones, literally everything can affect what is being said on the scale. Now, for every single person going through a fitness journey or a transformation, there's going to be 3 phases to it. Okay, there's going to be the first phase where we have to pay attention to absolutely everything that we're doing. We have to really, really try and actively do everything. We need to put so much focus on it, and it probably takes a little bit more time, and it will take longer for these habits to get ingrained, which is usually what I would consider the first sort of 6 months of your journey. And then we have phase 2, the integration phase, which is where we're really starting to integrate everything into your day-to-day life, like your steps, your training, your scheduling, your routine. And then we go into the automatic phase where everything is just an absolute breeze because it is just a part of your life. It's like brushing your teeth, and showering. I'm sure nobody needs to tell you guys to brush your teeth, shower, or wash your hands. You just do it, right? And that's the sort of position we want to get you guys in when it comes to eating good quality food, looking after yourself, lifting in the gym, because when you're in this phase, it's easy. Like for me to not go to the gym, it's difficult because I've just done it for so long now. And that's where we want to get you guys to. Does that all make sense in the chat? Just stick a 1 or something in. Awesome. Amazing. 111. Love that. Love that. Okay. Fantastic. Amazing. Amazing. Cool. Sweet. So, second principle, and this is, going to help a lot of you guys out, is training. How do we train for a physique transformation? Okay. So I mentioned the difference between training and exercise earlier. Exercise, we're going, ticking a box, we're sweating, we're getting a pump. Training, however, is where we go in and we focus on performance and we drive adaptation. We've got a clear plan, targets to hit, and every single time we go in, we are trying to progressively overload. Training is going to be hard. It's going to be fucking rewarding. It's so important to have intent in these training sessions. Otherwise, we're just floating and we're not going to get the results that we want. Okay. we need absolutely to give the muscle a reason to change. You know, it will not change if we don't make it change, right? To put it really simply, growing muscle comes from creating micro tears, right, through lifting weights. And then whilst we're resting, the damage to the muscle fiber is filled in and repaired, forming new muscle, right? Which is why it's so important to have our recovery days, rest days, deloads, right? And why we put a specific focus on, you know, stress and sleep management, right? But this is the take home. We need to progressively overload. Now, from a basic standpoint, this is where we're looking to increase weight for the most part, frequency, number of reps in our gym sessions. Okay. This is going to challenge the muscle and it will grow if paired with effective recovery. Okay. And as we progress throughout our training, you're going to be challenged in various ways from a programming perspective. I generally start with everyone on a bit of a more simple straight sets program. And then when you've been with myself a little bit longer, we have a little bit more fun, or I have a bit more fun anyway, when it comes to like things like giant sets, supersets, and you know, working you guys really fucking hard, right? But this is something that you need to do as you get that little bit more advanced. If you were a complete beginner trying to do 40 reps, it's not going to end very well. But ultimately, every single one of you, when you are in the gym, when you are training, it needs to be hard. You know, you need to feel the burn in the last few reps of every single exercise. If you're getting to the end of your sets and just going, great, next set, I've done 15 reps, it's not enough. You need to train really fucking hard to create change. That change does not happen without change. Okay. Now, how we can apply progressive overload really, really easy is say you go in on 1 week, you're doing leg press, 100 kilos. Week one, you do 8 reps. The next week, your goal is 9 reps, right? And you need to chase that. There's going to be some weeks where maybe you've slept like shit, you're training at a different time, and you don't hit it. Whoop-de-doo. The next week, you've got to hit it. You've got to go for it, right? But if we're lifting the exact same weight, the exact same amount of reps for months on end, we're not making progress. You know, we need to be moving those numbers up. It can also look like, say you go in, you do that 100 kg, right? You do 8 reps. The next week, you stick with 8 reps, but you do 102 kg. I would generally stick with the first one. You know, I think you can push it a lot further than constantly going up in weight. But ultimately, what we want to do is max out the rep range that you've been given. So if your training program says something like 10 to 15, 8 to 12, something like that, you've got to work up to the top of the rep range for all of your sets and then progress by the smallest increment. Okay. We can also do this through, you know, changing around the tempo, which, you know, I think is great, but I would do that in a different training block. I think really, unless you're focusing in on improving form, reps and weight are the two that you really want to drive home. Okay. And then all of this is going to accumulate fatigue. Okay. You're going to get tired. All right. It's going to burn at a certain point, and you're going to feel like your recovery slowed down. You're maybe not sleeping as good, and then you need a deload, right? Which is something that worries quite a few people. They feel like, oh, I'm not going to go to the gym. Am I going to lose all my progress? No. You know, this is something I can't get my head around. When I have a deload, I'm buzzing that I'm not going to the gym because I'm fucking tired. I don't want to go to the gym in that week, right? But a deload for me is where you take 3 to 7 days off. Big fan of a deload. They are the best, absolutely the best, right? But 3 to 7 days off the gym, you know? And generally, if you are training really, really hard, where this would be is between 5 and 12 weeks. right? 5 and 12 weeks, depending on your training model. You can do what we call a devolume week. But for me, this is super, super boring. What you do with this is you basically go in less training intensity, less weight, less sets. I'd rather have the time to stay at home and not do that, or go for a walk and have a life than do that. But you can do that if you really, really want to. Okay. With this, though, as much as training really hard is super important, and a lot will be answered just by training harder, you cannot sacrifice good form when it comes to progressing. You're just going to see negative returns from this. So you need to have that fine balance of, lifting the weight, but keeping really, really good form. Okay. A way that you can sort of judge this is the feeling of it. You're going to know if you've been lifting really, really good. You're going to know if you've done a shit rep. But if you're newer, I would really recommend taking training videos, and just so you can see what the gold standard is and where you're currently at, and compare them or get feedback from myself. Okay. And then going into training intensity again is just to really sort of hit it home. It's got to be done. Right. And if we are in the gym, texting, talking to every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the gym, we're not taking effective rest times. We're just basically going in there and pissing around. We are not then going to be putting in a full effort into our training sessions, because we're going to be distracted, and that's normal. Like, I used to be criminal of answering you guys whilst I was in the gym having rest times. Now it's airplane mode on, music on, do not reply, because if I do, my training goes to shit, and that is the same for everyone. You see people in there in between, they're pissing around on their phone, right? Swiping on Tinder. They are not going to get the results that they actually want, because they're not going to be putting that intensity into it. Okay. Any questions on training so far, or are we all good? Awesome. Sweet. Cool. Right. Sound. So something else that is really, really important when it comes to your guys' training is either feeding back to myself, or if you're doing this solo, feeding back to yourself. Okay. Because if you're doing your training sessions and you're feeling absolutely ruined, right? You're not recovering, you're not progressing, something needs to change there. So it's just making yourself aware of, okay, how has this training actually made me feel? Now, you are again going to have the odd session where it probably does kick your ass, and we need to lump it. But if it's happening every single week, something needs to change there. Okay. Priming the body for a physique transformation. So now we're going to get into a little bit more on the nutrition standpoint, which again is sort of what I touched on earlier. And, we're not necessarily just going to, I'm not going to give you numbers per se, because we're all in different situations and scenarios, but I am going to give you guys some guidelines on what we need to be sort of aiming for. Okay. Now, stick it in the chat. Are we all comfortable with calories in versus calories out, calorie deficit, calorie surplus? Are we all happy with that? Just stick a yes or a 1 or something in the chat would be awesome. Amazing. Perfect. Cool. All good with that. Fantastic. Legends. The lot of you. Cool. So we're all good with that. Now, as much as that is sort of the underlying principle of where our physique's going to go, we need to look beyond that. If we really want to build an incredible physique, okay, the quality of the food we eat matters. If we fill ourselves with shit, we're going to feel pretty shit, right? At first, the main thing is consistency with everything that we're doing, right? And then we want to make sure our calories are aligned to the goal. Do we want to lose fat? Do I want to prioritize building muscle? And then from here, what we want to focus on is the macronutrients. Okay, so carbs, protein, and fats. And then looking at our micronutrients. So basically fruit, veg, health, right? And then at the very top of the tree is where we can look at supplementation, right? But if, again, we are filling our calories with crap, we could run into health issues, energy issues, recovery issues, sleep issues. The list goes on and on. You know, we all eat it. We absolutely do. You know, I absolutely love a burger, like probably more than anyone I've ever met. But if I was eating two every single day, I'd run into the ground pretty fucking quick, you know? So we need to be prioritizing good quality food. Now, with that comes the 80-20 rule. Okay. And it's a really, really good reference for most people. Okay. So this was just simply where 80% of your nutritional intake is going to come from healthy food, right? From single ingredient, unprocessed food. But then the other 20% can come from whatever you deem fit, whether it's got nutritious value or not, whether it's chocolate or whether it's an apple, it does not matter. You know, it's a small percentage, you know, it's just about keeping it within this balance. You could even, you know, save this up for maybe a few drinks at the weekend or a meal out, you know, but as long as you fit within this balance, you've got a cracking lifestyle and you're going to be making, you know, amazing progress and feel great too. So you've just got everything in harmony, because I can tell you from experience, I've been that chicken and broccoli dude taking things too far. It sucks. It's so boring. You know, we want to be able to do nice things like go out for a drink or have a meal out, you know, without stressing about it. And if, as long as we fit in this category, 80-20, happy days, absolutely happy days. Okay. Now, this is where I think things get really interesting and where you guys, having been on this call, are going to differentiate from other people. Okay, so Claire, this is going to really dig into your question earlier about how lifting weights and progressively overloading is going to change the way you look. Okay, so there's such a big difference between weight loss and physique development. Okay, anybody can lose weight, right? And people do lose weight, but you'll see them and they don't look any different, right? They're just smaller, right? But their body fat percentage is the same. They look the same. You know, it's not ideal. They're working hard, but they're not getting the result they want. What we want to focus on is changing the physique from a body fat perspective, not just weight. Okay. And we definitely don't want to just be using purely weight to tell us how we look. You know, go look in the fucking mirror and see how you look. You know, this is why we use progress pictures and other metrics to see what's changing. Because if your progress pictures are changing and your weight isn't really changing, but you're getting actively leaner, you're making progress. Like, his picture was at the start. Stephen, who did a photo shoot with myself, looks like he lost shitloads of weight, right? Because he's so much leaner. But because we optimized his training so much and nailed his food, he was obviously just building muscle and really changing how he looked. I think we ended up losing something silly, like 5 to 7 kilos, which if you look at his transformation picture, looks ridiculous. But it's why the metrics are so important. Okay. And having muscle gives you the illusion of having a better physique, you know, by having shape, you know, having curves, having a bum, having shoulders, you know, having a shoulder to waist ratio for guys, for girls, maybe guys too, wanting a bigger set of glutes. You know, this is what having muscle will do. It'll just really change how your physique looks. Okay. Now, to eat for muscle growth, to change how we look, you've probably all heard it, we need to prioritize eating enough protein. You know, as a general rule of thumb, what I would be sort of advising is to have or to take your body weight in pounds and have that as your protein target. If you are carrying a bit more body fat and you are slightly, heavier, we don't want to give you an absurd amount of protein. So what I would do in this instance is take your goal body weight and use that as your protein target, because otherwise you're going to be in a disproportionate amount of protein that you just don't need to be eating. Okay. And when we are consuming our protein count, I would be trying, where possible, to get it in from a variety of sources. So eggs, yogurt, white meat, red meat, fish, because all it's going to do is provide a full amino acid profile and enhance your chances of muscle growth. Now, getting a little bit more nitty gritty with this, to really maximize getting the most out of our protein, we want to look at having a protein feeding regularly. People have success eating 1 to 2 meals. Yeah, great. But to get better results, which every single one of you guys on this call wants, what we want to do is look at having a serving of 20 to 40, 50 grams of protein every 3 to 5 hours. So really what that's going to look like is 4 feedings for most people, 3 to 4 or 3 to 5 feedings of protein. Now, this is going to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, right? Which basically just ensures we're in a muscle building state. We're not losing muscle. We're not going backwards. We're in a muscle building state. Now, this is a smaller detail. The first thing we need to ensure is that we're eating enough protein, right? But then if we can spread the frequency throughout the day as evenly as we can, we're going to be getting even more from that protein count. Okay. And to just reinforce this again, we could hit our protein count from chicken nuggets, but that's probably not going to make you feel very good. You're not going to recover with that. It might taste better. And you could do, if you did them at home, great. But if we're eating McNuggets, is that going to help with our recovery and building muscle? No, it's not, unfortunately. But bearing all of this in mind, as important as some of these things are, we need to consider that the most optimal strategies aren't always the thing that we need to be doing, because we need to consider, can I actually adhere to this? Is what I'm doing manageable? There is no perfect diet, right? The perfect and best diet is the one that you can be adherent to, not the one that looks the best on paper, the one that you can be adherent to. Now, when it comes to priming our bodies to make this change, it requires us to know the calories, the proteins, and then if we're getting really into it, the fats and the carbs, right? And I would always recommend, at least for a period of time, tracking, right? So you can actually see what this food looks like. If I said to any one of you before you started looking at your food, right, what does 150 grams of chicken breast look like? You're just going to wing it and hope for the best, right? As we all would. Whereas now I've tracked for so long. If you said to me, give 150 grams, I will get it within 5 grams because I know exactly what it looks like, right? And that's the position we want to get you guys in, because again, long term, you probably don't want to track, right? And who can blame you? But we need to do it for a period of time to get you into that position. Okay. Any questions before I go on at all? Stick them in the chat. Or are we all good? Any that join late as well. If I'm looking off to the side, I've got 2 computers. I've stolen the girlfriend's computer so I can look at the chat. But if we've not got any questions, I will keep going. Or are we all good? With weight for, say, chicken, is it uncooked weight? Always go uncooked, only because when we cook food, which I'm sure you're probably aware of because you've asked the question, it has a dehydration effect. So 100 grams of cooked chicken is different to 100 grams of raw chicken, for example. Any other questions at all before I go on? Okay, I'll move on, but if anyone does stick one in there, I will catch back up. Don't worry. So, what we're going to go through now is how we can get past that dreaded plateau. So, a plateau, we all know, is progress is stalled, right? We're not dropping body fat anymore, right? Or we're seemingly not building any more muscle, right? And as you go through fat loss, I'm going to make this clear for every single one of you. There's probably going to be weeks where you maybe don't see the scale move down as much as you would like, right? That is normal. Now, we may or may not need to change anything in this situation. I'm going to sort of make it a little bit clearer for my sort of thinking behind as and when we need to make a change. Okay. So, when most people see a plateau, they change too much too soon. Okay. What we really want to do is make small, gradual changes throughout the journey, if it's even needed. You know, you'll sort of begin to understand that there's an array of tools that we have in our toolbox, to keep things moving forward, be it with lifestyle, with diet, with training, at certain times. But, you know, what we need to sort of look at is if we've still got another 12 weeks before we go on holiday, another 12 weeks of dieting, and we're already doing shitloads of cardio, right? And we're on like dust food. When that hits a plateau, we then have to do even more cardio or eat even less food. Really what we want to do throughout all of this is eat as much food as we can whilst getting the level of results that we want. Like why eat less food if you don't need to? Okay. Now, how I would make changes is generally calories, steps. You can do training volume if it's earlier on, so how many sets you're doing, so you burn more calories, or cardio, right? And if you are looking to get really nerdy, we can even use things like caffeine, because if we boost up caffeine, right, you're going to be burning more because you're going to want to move more. It's as simple as that, really. Okay. But it's really, really important to sort of highlight to you guys that sometimes life just does get in the way, right? And you've got other priorities, and that's fine. And then we might just adjust and bring food up for a period of time, or lower the amount of training sessions that you're doing. Like a client of mine at the minute is, going through a bit of a difficult time. So this week we've just gone, well, fuck it, let's go maintenance, let's relax, right? People cope with stress differently. He doesn't particularly want to go to the gym at this moment in time consistently. He's happy to go in and do one or two for this week, but for the most part, he wants to chill. So we've just gone, cool, let's do that. Let's relax. We'll get back to it for next week. So we just need to adjust as and when the sort of situation tells us to, or when you're feeling like it needs to be done. Okay. And when it comes to reading metrics, something that a lot of people get caught up in is I've only lost 1 pound this week, right? But sometimes that can be a massive result. If you repeated that every single week, what would that look like? I wish, guys, I had some of you may have seen it, like the actual sort of mold of the pound of body fat, because it's fucking massive, right? It's a lot, and if you lose that every single week, it might not necessarily be what you want, but it's going to make a fantastic amount of progress, because what really rules the house here is consistency, but people get caught up in, I've not lost a kilo, but a kilo for someone that's 100 kilos is different to someone that's 60 kilos. We need to make it realistic for each and every single one of us. And not give up. Like, I'm sure we've all seen the picture of that dude on social media where he's like digging for gold and he's like an inch away and then he's like, it's not here, I'll give up. Right. And that's what most people do with their diets. They give up right as they're about to, hit that jackpot. Right. And if you are making progress, yeah, maybe you need to be reassured that you're doing the right thing, but you need to keep going. You only fail when you give up, and you might be going through a period of time where a pound of body weight or a pound of body fat every single week is great for you. Right. But do not give up. Just keep going. Right. And then, as I sort of touched on a little bit earlier, sort of factors that can affect your weight, there are 101 of them, but we've got water, food, stress, environment, hormones, supplementation, medication. Like, there are so many things that can come into this that can sort of skew your body weight, which is why it's so important that we take, multiple metrics. Now, obviously, clients, you guys have the joy of getting me to make those tweaks for you, right? Where we sort of go back and forth between that. But as a rule of thumb for you guys in the future and for you guys that aren't clients, I would always, and this is situation dependent, you might be on a short deadline, but I would always have a 2-week rule, okay? Right, where you have 2 weeks, and if you've not made progress or not made the amount of progress you want, make a change, but only if you know you've been 100% on it. Because if you've done those 2 weeks and your adherence has been shit, what are you changing it for? You don't need to change the process. You need to change your adherence. Okay. Right. So 2 weeks, nail it 100%. If things aren't necessarily going your way, make a change. Caveat to that, though, is men, piece of piss, you can do that. With women, I would also look back on your cycle. Okay. Because yes, it might look like you've not made progress in those 1 or 2 weeks, but if you compare it to the month before, you might be a hell of a long way in front. I have multiple clients that every single month gain 2 kilos around their menstrual cycle, right? And if they were to then use those 2 weeks to make changes without looking at previous months, they would be working themselves into the ground without needing to. So men, 2 weeks is absolutely fine. It is with women as well, but I would still look back on the progress you've made over the last month and then compare that, right? Compare week 1 to week 1, week 2 to week 2, and so on. And it'll put you in a really, really good position. Okay. Before we go into the case studies, does anyone have any questions on anything so far? Stick it in the chat. Or are we all good? Give you guys a minute if you are, or if you do want to ask a question. Otherwise, I will get cracking. Any supplements that I would recommend for weight loss? Supplements for weight loss, honestly, they are all pants. Like, every supplement that is to do with weight loss, really what it has in it is stimulants, right? Because those stimulants are going to make you move more, right? So it's not actually burning any fat. It's just making you move more. They are shit loaded with caffeine, right? And that is literally all they are. When it comes to supplements in any aspect, they are the absolute cherry on top of the cake, right? The only supplements that work for fat loss are illegal, right? And they are illegal for a good reason, so we don't want to be dipping our toes in with them. But hopefully that answers the question. Any other questions, guys? Cool. Again, if I miss any, I will catch it up. I assure you that. So we're going to go through three case studies, 2 of which are actually on this call, which is awesome. But we're going to kick this off with John, right? John Nicholson. And John is an absolutely awesome guy. Okay. And John, when he first came to myself, like most people, had tried just about everything. You know, literally, he had so many beliefs, right, that had been taught to him or that he'd researched. And no doubt some of you guys too. But John, this was hilarious. So when he first started, when we had our first initial call, which must have been like 2 years ago now, he thought he needed to be perfect with every single vitamin. Okay. Like he showed me his cupboard of supplements and it was insane. Like he was wasting so much money on supplements. So the first thing I said to him, which sort of leads into your question as well, was bin them. That you don't need them. And he also thought he needed to be doing an insane amount of HIIT training that he just hated, right? He would go to the gym and just be miserable because he was having his ass whipped by the PT in there and having to just sweat and feel sick. So when he started with myself and the approach of nutrition was based around foods that he liked and a lot more relaxed and zero HIIT training, I'll be honest, John was a little bit skeptical, right? He was like, what is this? Like, are you serious? Like, in his first meal plan, I had him making homemade burgers, like with lean beef mince. And he was like, you are taking the piss. Like, seriously, I cannot eat that and lose weight, right? And I got him to go in the gym. And as I would recommend all of you guys, taking adequate rest, recovering between sessions or between exercises and sets. And, you know, he was skeptical, but he did trust me. You know, he very quickly built up a good level of rapport. And then as he progressed more and more, he relaxed. You know, his relationship with food got better and better. And by the end of it, you know, he was cooking awesome dishes because he realized ultimately I have free reign to pretty much eat what I want within reason, right? And I just got creative with it because and it all stemmed from him asking questions, you know, because if you guys aren't sure on something, the only way for you to get the answer to that is ask the question. But then came a bit of a sticking point with John, which was his time and recovery. So John is a carer. And as I'm sure you guys can all appreciate, they work insane hours, you know, days, nights. The guy does not stop. Okay. Now, it was difficult because John really loved training, you know, and at the time, I think we were training 4 or 5 times a week. You know, I would have to double check, but it was between 4 or 5. And he trained really, really hard. But we did begin noticing his mood dip a bit, his performance, and he just wasn't necessarily wanting to train as much, you know, and it was all down to his recovery. He was just shot, you know, but John brought it to the table. And as I touched on earlier with someone's question, we actually started training less. We just started training 3 times a week, and less was more for John, you know, because he felt a hell of a lot better. He could train even harder and he recovered well. And John ended up, as you can see on the screen, losing 28 kilos in 8 months. 28 kilos in 8 months and did this shoot. And what I put John's result down to is just turning up, being consistent and communicating. Okay. As well, guys, if you have any questions on any of these case studies, drop them in the chat. We are nearing the end now. We're just going to go through case studies, sum up. But yeah, if you have any questions on them, drop them in the chat. Carl, mate, we're going to go through you now. So Carl is the most recent one of the lot. Now, Carl's another one that had tried absolutely everything. Okay. And never really got into the place that he'd want. He had seen some level of progress, like with keto, with couch to 5K. And yeah, maybe he got progress, but it was never lasting. And the reason for that is it was miserable. You know, if I had to never eat carbs again, I'd be pretty damn miserable too, you know. And the sort of tipping point for Carl was last year, he had a holiday where he didn't want to take his top off because he didn't feel great. But what that did is it triggered him to reach out to myself and go, you know what, screw this. Let's do things the right way. And then from here, again, Carl is another one. Got an awesome working relationship with Carl, right? Where he really did talk to me about his day to day, the food that he liked. Right, I'm going to quote him in a minute as well, which I'm sure he'll like. But we could build him a routine that genuinely works for him, the one that was actually enjoyable, right? Which made he actually enjoyed the food that he was eating, right? Like genuinely enjoyed it, which made sticking to his diet a hell of a lot easier, which was the biggest bottleneck for him before because he'd always seen it as a bit of torture. And to quote Carl, he's a meat and potatoes guy, right? He's not a cabbage soup guy. A quote from our shoot the other week, which did really, really tickle me. But, this time, anyway, things were different, because, as much as I did push Carl, and there's no getting away from that, it was a hell of a lot more enjoyable, and Carl ended up shifting 22 kilos in 11 months, right? Doing a photo shoot. And in those 11 months, he went on a skiing holiday. He went to a biking event and he went on holiday to Spain just before he looked like this, just before the shoot, and he's been on a third holiday since, but as amazing as this result is, and it looks, the biggest sort of win for me was in that holiday, he went to Spain this year. Again, another quote from Carl, the top was barely on because the confidence was there with the transformation that he'd gone through. And Carl, again, is someone that works his arse off. He does his job. He runs his farm. He helps others out or helps friends out on their farms. So time is not necessarily there. Okay. So what we need to do with this, and this goes back to the uni question of earlier, we look at the time you do have, not the time that you don't have, because there's no point programming things that you can't do. Look at what you can do and absolutely smash that. And I'm absolutely loving the support for Carl in the chat. You guys are all legends. Now, we're going to go through Joe. I'm going to give you a bit of the down low on Joe, and then I want you to fire her some questions because I don't want her to undersell herself, because Joe here, Wonder Woman, is a fucking machine, right? She absolutely is a machine, right? And I've even spoke to her friends and they said the exact same thing as well. Now, when Joe came to myself, I think it's fair to say she was doing what I mentioned earlier with exercising and not training. She was doing a lot. She was already into fitness, but it wasn't purposeful. It wasn't targeted to get the result that she wanted. And I think she'll like how I'm going to pull the sort of physique she wants. Joe wants to build what I would call a badass bitch physique. Right? And Joe is unbelievably consistent, right? She just needed that helping hand to get her to the position she wanted. So with literally slight tweaks, to Joe's nutrition and getting her to progressively overload in the gym, we did this in like 4 months, just over 4 months, which is absolutely crazy, right? And then the barriers with Joe, it's just time again, but the amount of shit this woman gets done in a day is just phenomenal. Like, we had to make everything built around her so that it was feasible. She's got kids that she's got to look after. She takes them to football at the weekend. She's always chasing them around, like the crazy mum that she is. She's got work. She is everywhere, but she never misses a beat, because she's crystal clear on exactly where she's going. And for me, that's what makes her transformation so fucking special, because she turns up no matter what the circumstance, because she knows where she's going and she's fucking sprinting to get there. And what, separates people like Joe, Carl, and John apart from other people, and and you guys on the call for turning up. You know, you guys all separate yourself from others because you are looking for answers to problems. You're not looking for problems. You've all come to this call looking for answers, you know, rather than going, oh, I don't know how to do this, so that's a problem. You've all turned up and gone, what's the solution? Right? Which Joe is an absolute master at. Okay. And ultimately the goal for Joe now is beat Joe here. But Joe, like I said at the start of the call, is going to be an absolute legend and unmute herself. So you guys can ping her some questions. You know, we won't pester her too much, but I think it'd be really cool for you guys to sort of see things from her perspective. I've got a couple preloaded. So Joe, what for you was the hardest thing about your whole journey?
I love food. I love food so much. And mentally for me, the calorie deficit was hard, right? But it so reminded me, brought back all sorts of lovely memories when you were talking earlier about high volume food. And I remember when you told me about cauliflower rice, and it literally like changed my life when you told me about cauliflower rice, because I'd been hungry and I was like, I'm a horrible mum right now. I'm not a nice person to be around. But you were like, have you tried cauliflower rice at lunchtime? And I was like, oh my God, no, I haven't. What is this ridiculous thing? But oh my God, it changed the game for me. Like, and then, you know, it is meant for me, it was always like the mental challenge of managing my food, because I just love food. But we also worked around, didn't we, me keeping in pizza and wine on a Friday night, which was always like you say, my life is a bit crazy. But so my kind of like, I get to Friday evening and my kids go to their dad's and I'm like, Lord, pass me the pizza and the wine. And I was so worried I'd have to like let that go. I didn't think I could do it. You were like, I don't have to do it. We just work around it. And so every Friday night, I still kept my pizza and wine. It was slightly different, but it still was my pizza and wine. And we had Christmas in the middle of this as well. Do you remember? So it was 4 months, and we started this time last year, and then the photo shoot was early March. So yeah, that was the hardest thing for me.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I love that. I absolutely love, I still love seeing the pizza and wine stories on your Instagram. I see it and I'm like, go on, girl.
They're
Enjoy
essential.
It's got to be done. It absolutely has to be done. Cool. So I'll read it out if you can't see it. But I've got a question from Cara in here which says, mentally, what gets you to the gym when you have those days when it's the last thing that you want to do?
Okay. So for me, I have this strategy, this little like technique that I have developed where I essentially don't allow myself to think about the alternative. So it's too easy, isn't it? When you kind of think, okay, I've got to get my training in today. I'm knackered, have done a really busy day, don't really feel like it. I would much rather sit on the sofa. I could just watch some telly. I could just have a glass of wine. But what I do is I just don't allow myself to think of the alternative. I have in my mind, I set my plan at the weekend for which days of the week I'm going to train, I map it all out in the planner. And I just don't give myself the option. I'm just like, this is what I'm doing today. I'm going to train. And so as soon as those little thoughts start to creep in where I'm like, oh God, I'm tired, I'm just like, yeah, but you're going to train. Just go, like, make your body walk up the stairs, put your gym kit on, just go and get your trainers, walk out the door. And once you're out the door and you're in the car, then what you're going to do? Turn around and go back? No, of course you're not. So you get in the car, and then once you're at the gym, you're at the gym then. So what are you going to do? Not train? Like, then I just don't give myself the out. Just don't give myself the alternative. That's the way that I do it.
I love that. Absolutely love that. You know, and it's really evident that that is genuinely the case with Joe. It's just I don't ever think, unless there's been a genuine reason, that Joe has ever missed a training session.
Mm-mm.
Ever.
If I say I'm going to go, I go. And if I know I'm not going to be able to go in the week, then I know that at the beginning of the week. I know that I've got something on and I'll only be able to train twice or whatever. But yeah, militant.
100%. But that leads into like, when it comes to that, like there's such a difference between missing the training session because you planned ahead and go, you know what, I just physically can't get there. and going, you know what, I can't be asked. You know, it's going, right, my expectations for the week are, or my 100% week is I can only get 2 sessions in. So I'm going to get those 2 sessions in. And then next week, I'm going to get all 3 in. So that's cool. Awesome. Awesome. Another question I've got for you is, what is your biggest like learning curve or takeaway from the whole process? Like, have you learned anything about yourself? You know, anything like that?
Massive amounts about myself, but the biggest thing was that I didn't know what I was capable of. And you touched on it earlier. I'm 44 next month. I never would have thought that I could look like that in that picture. I always wanted to. I always thought like that would be cool. Like imagine if you could do that, but probably can't. Like, you know, you just haven't got time, or your body doesn't really do that, or you love pizza and wine too much. Like it's never gonna happen. And it's because I had the program that we built around my nutrition and my training, which was so exactly, and also I only did 2 sessions at the gym a week. I did 2 gym sessions and 2, because I couldn't get to the gym 3 times a week at that point. So I was doing 2 home workouts alongside 2 gym workouts, because that's just what life needed to look like for me. So it was having something that really just worked for me, that meant that I suddenly could achieve these things. I suddenly could go, oh my God, like I can't believe I weigh this little, but I look like I've got muscle and I've got tone, and I don't recognize myself. Even now I look back there and I'm like, oh my God, that's me. And it's that sense of achievement. And I suppose that's the thing that got me through as well. Whenever training was tough, was like, I've got a goal. We've set a target. I want a kick-ass body. I don't want age or perimenopause or any of those things to get in my way. I'm like, I'm having that body and we're going to do it. And we did it. So that's the biggest takeaway for me, is just you never know what you're capable of until you really try.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Awesome. Awesome. I love that. Absolutely love that. Any other questions for Joe, guys? Stick them in the chat. And then we're going to go through a little bit about myself before I sum up and let you guys chill. Give them 30 seconds. But Joe, thank you so much for unmuting and coming on and sort of chatting about that. I think it's really cool to see things from, you know, someone else's perspective, because I could be making all this shit up, you know, so it's nice when you can actually see it from someone else's perspective as well. So that's really cool. Awesome. Cool, guys. So last case study then is we're going to go through myself, because I know it's really easy to look at people like me that do this for a living and think, that's a piece of piss. They do not understand me. They have not struggled. Now, for me, it's a little bit different. So for me, absolutely everything was fantastic, training, exercise wise, up until COVID. Like my whole life had been revolved around sport. Okay. But COVID really hit me hard, because I had never, ever, ever gone a period in my life without training. You know, I started playing football when I was like 5. You know, I was swimming at a really, really high level, you know, from like 9 until 15. Then I got into the gym, and then I was in the gym for like 5 years. And then this thing happened where I had that taken away from me, you know, and I fucking hated training in lockdown, because all I had was press ups and a resistance band, and I absolutely hated it. You know, I was doing it for the first couple months, but I was just I was more miserable doing it than I was not doing it, because it was just pissing me off. You know, so it got to a point where my only exercise was walking. You know, and because I wasn't training, stopped taking as much notice over my food. You know, I still eating healthy food because that is the food that I like. I don't, you know, I like to feel okay, but I got into what I would consider my worst ever shape and worst ever headspace. Like things just weren't clear for me, because I didn't have this thing that I was really, really passionate about. But when the gyms did open, my head felt instantly better, because I was like, oh great, I can go train. but I was the most unfit I'd ever been. So going back into the gym was really hard, really hard. I felt horrible. I remember going in on a bench press and all my joints, I felt like I was like 1,000 years old. I felt like I was going to break, right? So when I started training again, it was horrible. It's grim, but that's the same for everyone. When everyone trains at the beginning, it's hard, you ache, but you need to keep going. And I knew that obviously, but I still wasn't really enjoying it. I was turning up, but I was hating it, you know? So I felt like I was in a rut, and I actually got myself a coach at that point, which isn't the coach I have now, right? Just to pull me out of a bit of a funk, because I just felt like ass, because I had no goal, no direction. I had nobody to talk to about the fitness side of things, why I felt so shit, right? Which is literally the reason that I did a shoot and I did a show, is because I wanted that direction. I wanted a goal, right? And I think that's a lesson for every single one of you on this call, right? Is to have a deadline in place. So you're not just like, I'll get there someday. Okay. If I was doing that and I didn't put this in place, I would still be here and probably even further behind, because I just didn't know what to do with myself. Okay. But having that deadline in place, there's 6 months between these pictures, because I had a deadline and I had to get to fucking work. Right. And having that deadline in place got what I would consider my life back on track, back being myself. And I really think it could be something that is a bit of a catalyst for yourself as well. Okay. Any questions on any of that before I sum up everything that we've gone through there? Drop them in the chat if you do. Give it another 20 seconds and then I'll sum up. Cool. I am going to sum up. So, guys, the gist of all of this, right? Creating a physique is a process. It is a process. Don't exercise, train for a transformation, prime the body for a transformation, accept that plateaus are going to happen to every single one of us, right? But we all have the same tools. Every single one of us in this group, we have access to the same sort of things. Okay. So we need to use them. Okay. And what I want you guys to sort of hone in on is using accountability to get you further. Post things in the group, post things on your social media, hold yourself accountable to those standards. Because when you put yourself out there, it ain't just you anymore. You are going, shit, I might just have 10 people watching me, but I need to do this now. I've told the people in this group that I'm going to do my 3 gym sessions this week. They've done theirs. I should do mine. So put it in the group. Hold yourself accountable to myself, yourself, and other people, and it will pay dividends. I can absolutely, assure you of that. And lastly, any questions about anything we've gone through here at all? Come off screen share now. So I'm a little bit more friendly. Any questions, guys? Stick them in the chat. Otherwise, I will let you guys go to sleep. Awesome. Well, if you guys don't have any more questions, thank you so much for turning up. Oh. Thank you very much, Cara. Thank you for turning up. You guys are absolutely awesome. And I hope you've taken a lot of value from it, first and foremost, right? It is going to be recorded. I know it was quite long, so we can watch it back and sort of learn everything from there. But guys, again, thank you for turning up. You're all absolute legends. Go and enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a cracking night. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.